This is the Stephen A. Smith Show podcast.
I'm Stephen A.
Feel a little like I need that beat in my life a little bit more.
I am willing to bet that you play that right when you wake up every morning at 3 a.m.
That's my wake-up song.
It is, isn't it?
It is. Nicole Briscoe and Taylor Twellman with you. It's the Stephen A. Smith Show on ESPN Radio, the ESPN app, Sirius XM Channel 80. Of course, we're simulcast on ESPN News, so high wave to the cameras for those who are watching. Hi. You can tweet us at RBMisses. It's actually RB_Mrs. It's a long story. And at Taylor Twellman. And
it's not a long story. That's not.
It's not a long
Taylor
story?
Twellman, just straightforward.
That's pretty straightforward.
Yep.
Or give us a call, 1-888-729-3776. Look, guys, I think an absolute miracle in sports happened today.
What's that?
We'll get to that in a second. The satisfying crunch of Nature Valley Crunch bars can keep your family going, which means more outside fun for you. And the whole grain oats and real delicious honey, it's real tasty too. Nature Valley Oats and Honey Crunch Bar. The miracle is Tua Tagovailoa.
I know. Are you surprised?
No. What I'm surprised about is that I was sitting in my car waiting to hear the words from his mouth because no one knew. It's time for a Straight Talk, brought to you by Straight Talk Wireless. That's the miracle. Like in this day and age where we have all the information at our fingertips, we were literally waiting to hear it from his mouth, and it's a miracle, and it was so refreshing.
It was very refreshing, especially because I know how important the decision was, and we're going to get into it. But when you look at Tua's face and his reactions, and even the answers to how he answered that, but I just think it was a very, very warming thing with this day and age, the media, how this company thrives on having that inside information.
Just give me the information right now.
Nobody had any idea until 12 o'clock Eastern whether or not Tua was going to stay.
And I think it was the right decision for him to leave.
I agree. I think timing is of the essence when you're an athlete, and the amount of injuries that Tua has had and the dollar sign that's projected for him, I think absolutely is. But I understand the heartstrings that are pulling for Tua and maybe that family. When you uproot that family, you move it to Alabama, you go all in. You don't want your last memory of playing at Alabama to be that real serious hip injury. Absolutely, Nicole. So I understand that, but listen, you only get one bite at the apple at this NFL career, and so often injuries. It's a lot of money to turn down.
Yeah, it's Nicole Briscoe and Taylor Twellman with you on the Stephen A. Smith Show. You look at the numbers in the NFL and the amount of money that they essentially throw at you, or if you are a first round pick. And there's a big difference between, there was once the conversation where it was like, oh, tank for Tua or whatever, right? So he was a presumptive number one for a long time. And look at Kyler Murray last year, right? The difference between Kyler Murray and Dwayne Haskins. Kyler Murray, $20-ish million. Dwayne Haskins, only $8.5 million for falling as far down as he did, and it's middle of the first round. And right now, I mean, Mel Kiper Jr. on his big board says he's the third best available player in the draft. So if you need a quarterback, Tua is going early.
Yeah.
You're setting yourself up, even if a team is taking a risk, you're setting yourself up, and you're essentially your future family up for generational wealth. How do you say no to that? How do you stay behind and take a chance?
I think because Tua, just letting the natural reaction to the situation, didn't want to go out his Alabama career. He envisioned winning the Heisman and then moving on. He envisioned a totally different last season, but that's not how sports
That's not how life is.
That's not how life is. Bingo. I look at Tua's situation. I know everyone in the NFL and talks about the money thing, but hear me out. You're a Packers fan.
Yep.
Did Aaron Rodgers end up making more money because he went to a better situation? My argument with Tua, if they would have asked me and said, hey, Tua, I'm not going top 7. Well, hold on a minute. You talk about the 28 million to 8 million between Kyler Murray.
You'll get it.
You're going to get it tenfold if you're in a better situation.
You're going now. So what if you don't make it up the top?
Agreed.
If you stay healthy and you are as good as everyone expects you to be, you're 1 year closer to that next deal, and that next deal is going to be even bigger. So just get there earlier. Stephen A. Smith is going to call into his own. Is that weird? Stephen A. is going to call in to his own radio show.
I think for very few people in life, it's not that weird. I think Stephen A. is one of them.
Okay.
I think he loves it.
All right. So Straight Talk Wireless, everything for less, only at Walmart. We're going to have much more on Tua's decision because the press conference was a little.
It told me a lot.
Yeah. There was a lot that you could take into it. Physically, if we could read sort of like the look on his face and like body language, and there's a family dynamic. So Laura Rutledge has been in Tuscaloosa. She's going to join us a little bit later. Dan Orlovsky is going to join us too, just sort of his perspective. And you can add to this as somebody who was injured and your career was cut short at a time that you had years left. So we'll get to that a little bit later. But there was another big story too. And I was a little annoyed because SportsCenter AM, like I was on SportsCenter AM this morning, me and Randolph Scott.
Like, could we have had this information 30 minutes earlier?
Not even 30. By the way, it sort of feels like I'm cheating on Randolph.
You think Randolph is okay with it? I do.
I think he's probably napping and has no idea that this is even happening.
That's a good point.
It's fine.
We'll send him pictures.
Now you're onto something. It's good. Anyway, like 10:04 a.m. Literally 10:04. Adam Schefter is confirming that Mike McCarthy will be named the 9th head coach in the history of the Dallas Cowboys. And I'm like, cool. Where was this 5 minutes ago? 4.5 minutes ago, we could have been like, blah, 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 and then at least said it. No.
So you're the former Packers fan, or still
I'm still a Packers fan? No. I was born in Wisconsin. I'm still a Green Bay fan.
Former head coach. Is that the right move?
I like it.
Okay.
I do. Here's my thing. I think if you wanted a splash and you wanted a name and you wanted to be all glitzy, whatever, fine. Maybe this isn't that move for Dallas fans. But you've got a guy who has done something your last handful of coaches hasn't been able to do, right? Mm-hmm. Jason Garrett didn't. Yep. He barely took you to the Super Bowl 50% of the time. Mike McCarthy won a Super Bowl.
In that building.
And in that, I happen to be, I know because I was there.
Well, you don't really remember that, but you were there.
I was there. No, I remember. Okay. Are you kidding me? No, I remember. Like, that was like one of the greatest days of my little sports life. But
I'm sorry to hear that.
I didn't get to play in a World Cup or whatever. Like, I'm not cool like you. But no, like, this is a guy who has done great things. Like, remember sort of like the heyday of Aaron Rodgers and that Green Bay offense. Like, I'm the first person to tell you that Aaron Rodgers and that offense this year, not exactly what I was hoping for it to be. And I don't necessarily think Rodgers is the player that he was. So and I'm going to go ahead and say that I'm assuming Dak's staying in Dallas. So what can Mike McCarthy do with a young and up-and-coming quarterback in Dak Prescott? He's also a guy that I think has been humbled, right?
Yeah,
of course. You think Mike McCarthy, who didn't get a couple of jobs last year after he was fired by Green Bay, I think he's been humbled by that.
I think anyone would be in their right mind.
So then he's humbled, but he also is like, I don't care about the press conferences. Let Jerry go out and be the face. I'll just stand by and coach the team and, I don't know, win games.
Yeah, I mean, Nicole, when you really look at it, there's always two sides to the story because the Dallas Cowboys and that brand is so large and big. There's the exciting, sexy aspect of that, which more often than not, the owner takes a huge part. He takes huge pride in that being who you are as the Cowboys. So the Lincoln Rileys, right? You look at the college coach, that kind of aspect.
Like Urban Meyer,
right? The sexy name coming in. Immediately you go to Twitter, go to social media, and even some of our media here at ESPN, that are huge Cowboys fans look at it and go, ugh. But the truth of the matter is that when you look at Mike McCarthy's time with the Packers in comparison to other teams in the NFC, by the way, 2008 to 2016, the best record in the NFC. Who's the coach? Mike McCarthy. Top 5 offense, top 10 defense in his entire tenure there.
No, yeah.
It's not bad.
It was 125, 77, and 2. I love the 2 ties. I mean, that's a damn good record.
Right, but we're left because the media tells us that Aaron Rodgers and he didn't get along anymore. Well, that's like any relationship. We're going to talk about Tom Brady and Bill Belichick. I'm not saying those two are on that same level.
Not always kittens and rainbows, right?
Absolutely.
But like, unless you're married, hell, marriages fall apart for that reason.
Right.
But like, relationships in life, they sort of have like a timeline on them. You know, everything runs its course. I don't look at Aaron Rodgers any differently than I look at Mike McCarthy. I don't look at Tom Brady any differently than I look at Bill Belichick. If there are cracks in the relationship, fine, whatever. I feel like, again, hey, kid, that's life. Like, you make it work, and sometimes when it's run its course, one of you has to go in a different direction. Well, that's what happened in Green Bay.
Yep. But put yourself in a Cowboys fan's shoes. They want sexy. They want everything. I actually think this is a pragmatic move. I actually believe this is a move that surprised me. Now, people are saying, what's the difference between Jason Garrett and Mike McCarthy? You and I just talked about that for the last 3 minutes.
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely.
There's a big difference.
There's leadership there. I just hope Mike McCarthy's changed a little bit, because what Aaron Rodgers and the Packers said when they let him go, analytics and the new way, the new NFL, he wasn't totally part of that.
No, he wasn't.
I wonder over the last 16, 18 months if he did anything on that.
I have a feeling Stephen A. has a few thoughts on this, and we'll hear from Stephen A. on the Stephen A. Smith Show coming up in just a little bit. He's going to call in on ESPN Radio. It's Nicole Briscoe and Taylor Twellman filling in for that very loud, booming voice.
Yes.
that
we don't really need to. Just we'll get him on the line.
Do you honestly think, though, that Jerry Jones could have pulled somebody like a Lincoln Riley?
Absolutely.
Do you?
I do.
Why?
Because I think we are underestimating the power of the Cowboys brand and what that job entails. That is the richest team in pro sports in the United States of America.
It's in the top 5 across the world.
And that's exactly where I was just going to go. So that prestige for a Lincoln Riley, with all due respect, I'm not hating on the Oklahoma Sooners in that program, but you're going to resurrect the Cowboys and be the first coach to lead him back to the Super Bowl, where, by the way, everyone, you and I were very young when the Cowboys were in the Super Bowl last.
Well, yeah.
And yet we talk about them like they go back every 4 or 5 years.
Conversation the other day, like if you are in your young 30s, right? And I'm a little older than that, so I do have memories of them being good, in part because of, they sort of beat up on my team a couple times along the way, but if you are young 30s, late 20s, you would have had to have been like a kindergartner or something, or younger, to remember them actually being in the Super Bowl.
Marcus Spears, who works here at ESPN, he was 11 years old. He played for the Cowboys, was 11 years old when they were in the Super Bowl last. So my point of this whole thing...
let that sink in for a second.
Yes, and now you're asking me, is that intriguing to a Lincoln Riley? I feel like it is.
That's the reason why I think it's not as intriguing anymore.
Okay.
Look, I think this goes with things being cyclical in life, right? There was once a point of time in the NBA where the Knicks...
Yeah.
Like Madison Square Garden, the Knicks, that was the Mecca. That's where you wanted to be. Now, they can't get anyone. And a lot of that is ownership, and a lot of that is the way that things have gone. But just because you were once bright and shiny and you were the new shiny object doesn't mean you're always going to be that way. Like, sometimes the shine comes off, and sometimes the ownership and the antics of the ownership wear thin, and you don't want to fall in line anymore. And I just don't know. I'm not saying that Lincoln Riley is going to get pulled from Oklahoma to go to like the Cleveland job, but I'm not saying it was as a slam dunk as maybe it once was.
And I don't think you're wrong on that. And I kind of agree with you to this extent, is we do talk. I mean, put it this way. When Cowboys insiders and NFL fans, NFL analysts and whatever on our network say, well, you got to, get the Cowboys back. What does that mean? Make the playoffs? Because this year they didn't make the playoffs. Like, you know what I'm saying? And I know
good enough. Just make the playoffs isn't good enough. So obviously
technically it's better what they did this year.
Yeah, but in my opinion, the talent on that team, that's not good enough.
But you're arguing my brand thing, and that's what I'm talking about. Any other team, we're talking about
talent. I'm arguing talent. I'm looking at that roster the way that they had it constructed this season and the number of Pro Bowlers they had in that team. More Pro Bowlers on that team than any other team in the NFL by kind of a long shot.
So Mike McCarthy's only successful if he goes to the Super Bowl. I know where you're going with this.
No, he doesn't have to go to the Super Bowl, but he has to be close.
Okay.
I'll give him a couple of seasons too. He doesn't necessarily have to do it next year, but he has to do it within the first 3.
And I'm curious on what other people, as they dive into this, how much is this hire to groom Jason Witten and help him along, and then he fills in? Because I'll tell you one thing. Everyone and their mother's telling me that Jason Witten is going to be the next head coach of the Cowboys. And when I look at that deal, is that why Mike McCarthy's kind of one of those things? Witten's going to come in, does Kellen Moore stay? We don't know. We're analyzing this, right?
Yeah.
How is Mike McCarthy going to change that entire team? But they had the number 1 offense in the NFL last year. I just want, statistically, they had the number 1 offense in the NFL.
Well, right.
And yet we're talking about Mike McCarthy coming in. Why? You don't really want to change that part.
Well, no, but I was going to say this year, like the point
which
differential
is why the hire's
was not
a
problem. The point they had no problem scoring most of the time. Like the point differential was there. They have Zeke Elliott missed a bit of time and still was the 4th leading rusher in the NFL this season.
You know what I'm getting at, though?
What are you getting at?
Mike McCarthy's hire, that tells me they've already had, I mean, they did have a sleepover Saturday night, so they've already gone through.
So creeped out by that,
I'm kind of curious, like, what was on the,
what
did they do? Like, did they play Madden? And like, if Jerry Jones, whoever was 2 out of 3, they got to make the decision. Like I'm just not totally sure.
Was Marvin Lewis there as well?
Yeah. Well, I'm not just wondering.
Like, maybe it was just like a big sleepover. Maybe that's how they decided.
Maybe Marvin Lewis is the defensive coordinator. We have no idea, but he was there for the sleepover.
Right. So maybe it was Marvin Lewis and it was Jerry Jones and it was Mike McCarthy. And I would imagine in my little messed up mind here, it was also Stephen Jones there. So Stephen Jones was making the popcorn and getting ready for like the 2 Madden controllers.
I kind of want that story. Out of all the stories, I want that story.
And then in the back of my mind, like Jerry Jones is like sitting there in some like Hugh Hefner-esque robe, like in the back lounge chair, just like
with
ready
a big
to take
star
it all
on the back of it.
Well, naturally.
Yep.
And then he's just like, ready, guys, winner of this game gets to be the new head coach of the Dallas Cowboys. Ready, set, go.
You just painted an unbelievable picture.
I think I might be onto something.
But I also think Jerry Jones and Mike McCarthy might be onto something because that sleepover and describing what you're going to do with the staff.
Yes.
This was already, I think the wheels already in motion and they got it.
Because I think it also kind of leaked out too. Taylor Twellman and Nicole Briscoe with you on the Stephen A. Smith show.
Cardinals fan and whatever she
Green
is.
Bay Packer.
Uh-huh.
My baseball allegiances are complicated, but whatever.
Cubs.
I think the wheels were in motion. Like, obviously, it took them a while to admit to the fact that, we are actually moving on from Jason Garrett. But I think the wheels were in motion. They already had an idea of what they wanted. That's why this has come so relatively quickly.
Well, all it takes is a sleepover.
A sleepover. I was just going to ask you a question, and all your sleepover thing made me lose my mind just slightly.
It kind of fits the Jerry Jones, Stephen Jones.
That's what it was. That's what it was. Who do you think had the bigger role in this decision? Because, look, Jerry's what? Jerry's 77? I don't remember what I had for breakfast this morning, but I'm pretty sure Jerry Jones is 77, right? And Stephen Jones is sort of like the future. Who do you think had more to say?
Isn't that funny when you say that that number for Jerry Jones? He still seems quicker, and younger than that number with how he responds in certain moments. He does in certain things. I find Jerry Jones to be very intriguing on that aspect. I think Stephen Jones is extremely powerful. I think anyone's naive to think otherwise. But
I'm not arguing that. No,
but I do think Jason Witten and that dynamic. What is this kind of why Mike McCarthy's brought in? Bring some leadership. He does have at least a Super Bowl to his name and developing Aaron Rodgers. So the credibility, he's going to have the locker room. But what he does with the defense, Nicole, all I'm talking about is Mike McCarthy is known for his relationship and what he did with Aaron Rodgers. Okay, so you're going to make Dak better? They're already the number 1 offense. That defense couldn't stop anybody.
No, but I also need to remind you, have to still bring Dak back, whether it's you give him a contract or you franchise tag him. Like, he's not under
contract.
I'm
saying Dak stays there, but is he developing Dak? Of course, he's going to help improve him, but he developed Aaron Rodgers. Mike McCarthy was there. He was a huge part of that. You follow where I'm going?
Yeah.
I love the conversations all about their offense. It's the number 1 offense in the NFL.
But if that's the conversation and that's where we're going, I do have some concerns. As a Packers fan, I can think off the top of my head only a handful of times where I was like, damn, that's a good defense, right? Which is concerning. Yep. Or do you take the Lincoln Riley, Oklahoma approach where you're like, my offense is so good, it doesn't matter if my defense can't stop anything because my offense is just going to outscore you. So are we okay with that now? Like, if you're a Dallas fan, are you okay with that? Yeah,
and I think that's why there's concern. I really believe that. Now, has the leopard changed his stripes a little bit, and has he learned anything from being away from the NFL? That's what's going to truly tell us whether Mike McCarthy's up to work with Jerry Jones and the Dallas Cowboys.
So it was a big weekend in the NFL, and that is sort of continuing on this Monday as we continue the conversation on the Stephen A. Smith show. It is Taylor Twellman and Nicole Briscoe. So Tua is declaring for the draft.
Yep.
We'll get into that a little bit later. Mike McCarthy is the new coach. Not officially named, but he is the new coach of the Dallas Cowboys. It was a very wild card weekend, was appropriately named.
Yeah, it was.
Right? So wild card week, the Saints and the Vikings got involved in a game that had a controversial ending. Stop me if you've heard of that before. Is Kirk Cousins okay now? Has he changed the narrative?
Oh, here we go.
I can't wait to talk to you about Carson Wentz as well.
Yep.
That's going to be big. That's it. Well, I mean, I can't imagine what it was like for him to know that something was wrong and he had to say, I need to be checked out. It's Straight Talk Wireless, everything for less, only at Walmart. So all of that's still coming up. Plus, what did you actually think of the hit that Jadeveon Clowney leveled on Carson Wentz? All of that coming up for you. Plus, a conversation with Stephen A. Smith. He's going to call in to his own radio show, which is not weird at all, but he's going to make that happen. Hulu paid Todd Gurley and his hashtag Catfluencer named Hulu Has Live Sports a lot of money to tell you that Hulu has live sports. But guess what? What they didn't get paid to tell you is that on top of live sports and over 60 channels, you can access Hulu's entire streaming library with tons of the hottest shows and movies and exclusive originals. You'll never want to turn off your TV. So start your free trial today. Live TV plan required. Restrictions do apply. Learn more at hulu.com. It's Nicole Briscoe. It's Taylor Twellman. It's the Stephen A. Smith Show. We'll be back after this.
Brought to you by Capital One. You know how it feels when you've saved enough for that long-awaited home edition? Now, imagine saving enough for an addition on that addition. That's the feeling with Capital One, where a new savings account earns 5 times the national average. Capital One is helping you earn more towards your savings goals. This is Banking Reimagined. What's in your wallet? Capital One N.A., member FDIC.
You're listening to the Stephen A. Smith Show podcast.
And call us on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line, 888-729-3776. Do we apologize for not being Stephen A., though?
No.
No.
I am who I am, and
yeah, exactly.
he is who he is.
I'm not going to apologize for that. I'm Nicole Briscoe. He's Taylor Twellman. We're on the Stephen A. Smith Show. Straight Talk Wireless runs on the same 4G LTE networks for up to half the cost. Get the unlimited plan with up to 25 gigs of high-speed internet, then 2 gigs for just $45 a month. No contract. Straight Talk Wireless only at Walmart. Which NFL game this weekend sort of has you still like running through it in your mind?
I live in Boston, so it's very difficult hearing what everything was about in New England leading up to the game when they lost to Miami, then all of a sudden losing the bye.
Oh my God, this could be Tom Brady's final home game at Foxborough.
Yeah. And for the first time, Nicole, and I've lived there now almost 17 years, for the first time I heard normal hot take spitfiring radio show host, TV host. Everyone was humbled because nobody thought it would ever get to this point. Everyone thought he would ride off into the sunset. He would do it his way.
Why? It so rarely happens that way.
Because when you are in the market and you are you don't become objective.
Oh, that is a very good point.
You don't. You lose your objectivity of reading the signs and understanding that this Belichick and Brady relationship has been so strong and beneficial, but it has had some cracks and how it's led to this point. And I think a lot of people saw the writing on the wall and it hit them. So to answer your question, for me, it's still the Patriots losing to the Dolphins. Then that last play that Tom Brady in a Patriots uniform could be a pick six.
I don't know about that.
Boy, that just leaves you with a nasty taste in your mouth. I'm not even a Patriots fan.
Only when it's convenient.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. No, I just think it's so very, very rarely happens that an athlete's able to like ride off into the sunset or whatever. Like Peyton Manning got to do it, right?
Yeah.
John Elway got to do it. But like Peyton Manning is a perfect example. If the Colts could just let him go, then no one is safe kind of thing. See, okay, so for me, I can't get this one image out of my mind, and it's Carson Wentz.
Yeah.
Just walking off the field. Second series of that game, and there was the hit by Jadeveon Clowney, and Carson, and it was an aggressive hit.
Yeah,
it wasn't flagged as targeting. It wasn't flagged. Should it have been?
Yes.
Why?
One, judging intent is almost impossible, so I'm not even going down that way.
No, and for the record, Clowney said, I did not intend to hurt him, and I hope he is okay.
But that also doesn't mean it's not egregious. Right?
Oh, okay.
And so when I look at how he head to the back of the head, helmet to helmet, no matter what it is, it's been called as a foul. It's been called as a penalty. So now it's not in that game, just like offensive pass interference
Yeah, no, I had an issue with
right?
that one. I
Vikings,
think I have more of an issue with that one than I do this.
The officiating was very difficult for me. Now, Carson Wentz not going to the ground and not sliding, and therefore the officiating afterwards saying that he didn't give himself up. He was a runner, so it was fair game. I'm basing it not on Carson Wentz not giving himself up, which I do believe is a huge part of this, but that's helmet to helmet to the back of the head. For me, that's egregious.
So you say it's egregious. Carson Wentz's own teammate, Jason Peters, he had a different word for it.
When he went down, now we behind the 8 ball, new quarterback, new cadence. With all the injuries, it was just an uphill battle. I mean, I seen the replay, and I just asked him, like, just stay off my quarterback. It's a dirty play, and he's like, no, I was just finishing the play.
And there's part of me that agrees with that. I think Clowney was trying to finish the play.
Oh, absolutely.
The problem that sort of we have, and this is the world in which we live, but we see everything in slow motion.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
In real time, it looks like a big hit, but in real time, it doesn't look as egregious.
Nicole,
use your word.
You're
right?
spot on.
When we see it over and over and over again.
How is this sport
motion,
being officiated?
Well, I don't know, because if you watch the end of the Saints game, I don't know how it's being officiated, because my eyes say that's a full arm extension and that's offensive pass interference. But again, like the rule has to apply to both. So are we looking at it or are we not looking at it? Because if we're not looking at it in slow motion, then I don't know if I'm viewing it the same way.
Completely agreed, but that's why they have replay, because it's humanly impossible to pull this off and to officiate it almost to 100%. So that's why replay was introduced. In my sport, soccer, football around the world, we're now using replay, and it's been an absolute circus, because you've got different evaluations in England, in Germany, in the States, Italy, wherever it may be. My point of this is that real time, slow motion, you go to replay, back of the helmet hit to the back of Carson Wentz. For me, it's not dirty, because that's saying he intentionally tried to do that.
Right.
But the tackle and the type of tackle should have been flagged. Therefore, it should have been flagged. But that still would have kept Carson Wentz going into the locker room.
It doesn't change anything. It doesn't
point.
change anything. ESPN Radio is presented by Progressive Insurance. Pick from a range of coverage options with the Name Your Price tool to find a price that works for you. It's the Stephen A. Smith radio show on ESPN Radio. It's Nicole Briscoe and Taylor Twellman. Stephen is on the phone. We're going to get to him in a second. And I also want to get back to the image that I can't get out of my head. The other big story today, though, is the one that's out of Dallas.
Yep.
And the fact that they have hired a new head coach, less than 24 hours after admitting that they finally parted ways or are moving on from Jason Garrett. Stephen A. Smith, welcome to your own radio program, sir.
What's going on, y'all?
I want to get your thoughts.
What's going on? Good afternoon.
I know that you never really have anything to say at all about the Dallas Cowboys, so I'm curious what you think. What do you think about their hire of Mike McCarthy as their new head coach?
I'm not moved. I'm not overly impressed. I want to emphasize that I think that he deserves our respect. He's a Super Bowl champion, and not only is he a Super Bowl champion, but on top of it all, in 13 years, I believe he's taking them to the postseason, the Packers to the postseason, about 9 different times. So he is to be respected, and I certainly don't mean to imply that he does not. What I'm saying is take into account what the Cowboys situation is. Dak Prescott, Ezekiel Elliott, Jerry Jones, the personalities that exist in Dallas, the microscope that you live under and what have you. He would seem to be an ideal coach because of his resume. But when you think about all the ancillary things that come with being associated with the Dallas Cowboys, I don't know if that's a match made in heaven. Then when you combine that with how he departed from Green Bay, you're talking about a guy that had, who I consider to be the greatest talent at the quarterback position the game has ever witnessed, in that bad man known as Aaron Rodgers. And when he walked out the door, the news was his relationship with Aaron Rodgers was not ideal. Aaron Rodgers thought that the offense was pretty archaic, relatively predictable, and that a new element needed to be implemented into the situation involving Green Bay. Fresher ideas, fresher mindset, et cetera, et cetera. And you want to look at Mike McCarthy and say, if anybody deserves a second bite at the apple, it's a Super Bowl champion who went to the playoffs 9 times in 13 years. And everybody's allowed to adapt and change and grow. So I certainly, again, don't mean to cast any aspersions on him, but I'm thinking about the mess that is the Dallas Cowboys, who repeatedly underachieve. And I've never, ever encountered us looking at the Green Bay Packers in the Mike McCarthy era and accusing them of overachieving. So that's where I'm a bit melancholy on the situation. It's not a bad hire by any stretch because of who we're talking about. But did I expect more? Did I expect better from Jerry Jones? Yes, I did.
Stephen A. Taylor Twellman, holding down the fort for you here in Bristol.
Thank you, man.
Biggest question I have, or actually surprised, and I want your reaction, was that Jerry Jones didn't want someone that was inexperienced, didn't want someone from the college ranks, and yet he's done that before and had success. That caught me off guard with the report then when Mike McCarthy is going to be the next Cowboys head coach.
Well, what we heard was that he was looking at and studying the analytics of the situation. People that are experts in the analytical department were telling him about how things were trending in the analytic world as it pertained to college coaches and their success or lack thereof on the NFL level. And that played a role in influencing Jerry Jones to say we needed somebody who's been here on this level, who's done it at a high level. That's the kind of guy that we need. If that was his thinking behind it, I cannot fault him for that. My personal opinion is that the best person for the job, certainly not long term, but in terms of a stopgap measure, would have been Urban Meyer. Last two jobs Urban Meyer has had in college football, he's won 85 and 90% of his games, respectively. The man has won 3 national titles. He is, without question, next to Nick Saban, considered the greatest football coach of the modern era. And this is before Dabo Swinney came onto the scene. And now that Dabo Swinney is there, he definitely has to be inserted into that conversation at Clemson. But the bottom line is nobody can refute the level of credibility that Urban Meyer has. Health issues obviously were a concern. And so when you look at it from a long-term perspective, Urban Meyer is not your guy. But if you're the Dallas Cowboys, what are you thinking about long-term for? You need to be thinking about the here and now because Jerry Jones is the one that is looking at his own mortality at age 77. He's the one that has alluded to the fact that he's running out of time. He's the one that highlighted the reality that it's about now, it's not about later. And to me, if all of those things are things that you've asserted publicly as well as privately, then to me it would have been a no-brainer to go the route of Urban Meyer, who I think would have demanded the respect of anybody he was coaching, because even though it was at a collegiate level, his success simply cannot be denied. It was nothing short of extraordinary. And if you were ever considering Lincoln Riley, how could you not consider Urban Meyer before Lincoln Riley?
And we don't know who was all considered in the conversation, just that as it has come out that they were talking to guys like Marvin Lewis and Mike McCarthy, that they wanted somebody with NFL experience. Yeah.
Can I interject about that? I think Marvin Lewis was simply hired to address the Rooney Rule and to placate folks. I don't think that Marvin Lewis was a legitimate candidate. As an African American in this country, it's one of the things that I find absolutely appalling, that on too many occasions black coaches get interviewed when they've got no chance in hell of getting the job, but you just want to satisfy the rule itself, which mandates that you must interview a minority candidate and give them consideration before ultimately making a hire. In the case of Marvin Lewis, I never would have supported him being the head coach of the Dallas Cowboys. I think that he deserves a shot to be a head coach in the National Football League again, but any man that's coached for 16 years and couldn't win one single damn playoff game doesn't deserve to be the head coach of the number one brand in professional sports, or at least professional football, that is the Dallas Cowboys. But I still don't appreciate the fact that of all the people that you interviewed to appease the whole Rooney Rule situation, it was Marvin Lewis.
I don't think you're wrong, Stephen A. I don't think you're wrong. Let me ask you this, because as you mentioned it, Jerry Jones is north of 75. He said it himself.
He's 77.
He's running out of time. Given that, how short or how long is the leash with Mike McCarthy for success?
Well, I think that unless it's a disaster, I think you can look forward to seeing Mike McCarthy at least the next 2 or 3 years in Dallas. And believe it or not, contrary to what folks may believe about me, because they know I despise Cowboy fans across the globe. I will never waver from the fact that I think Cowboy fans are the most disgusting, nauseating fan base in the history of American sports. They make me sick, and nothing makes me happier than to hear them be miserable because they can go 1-15, end their season on January 5th at 7:00, and by 7:15 they're declaring they're going to win the Super Bowl next year. This is what annoys me about Cowboy fans. But I don't feel that way about the Cowboys organization, and I certainly don't feel that way about Jerry Jones, who I've gotten to know, and to be quite honest with you, I'm incredibly fond of both him and Stephen Jones. I just think that when we look at them right now, to ask the question about Mike McCarthy and how long he's going to last, it all depends on Jerry. I spoke to Adam Schefter and Chris Mortensen, the great ones, on First Take this morning, and they both said that Jerry Jones's voice was the voice. Stephen Jones was heard along with others in Jerry Jones' inner circle, but he was the voice. I understand that. I respect that. That is the way that it should be. But what I'm wondering about is, was there a dissenting voice in the room, and Jerry Jones said, "The hell with you, I'm going to do what I want to do," or was everybody on board that Mike McCarthy was the way to go? So go ahead, Pops, let's do this. And that's what he's done. I'm wondering which way it fell in all of that. But again, this is not a horrible hire. It's not a bad hire. I'm just saying, with all the nonsense that went on with the Dallas Cowboys this season, how flagrantly they so underachieved, with all the nonsense and the noise that came with them, it is shocking that they answered that with Mike McCarthy. I expected more from them. We didn't get it. But we have to wish Mike McCarthy luck, because if anybody deserves a second chance, it's a Super Bowl champion that's gone to the playoffs nearly 75% of the times he's coached.
A Super Bowl champion who won a title in that very building that he'll be making his home for at least next season and seasons to come. It's Stephen A. Smith, host of First Take and this very show, the Stephen A. Smith radio show. Thank you, sir, for letting us keep your seat nice and warm for you in your absence. We'll try to do a good job.
I appreciate it. I have no doubt y'all will do a great job, and let my audience know I will be back next Monday, a week from today. I'll be back in the saddle.
Words directly from Stephen's mouth. Thanks. Have a good time away. It's the Stephen A. Smith Show. It's Nicole Briscoe and Taylor Twellman. Coming up, what is the weirdest gift you have ever given or received? We'll be back in a minute.
An interesting creature inhabits the flat, arid plains of many an automobile dashboard. The bobblehead. It's most agreeable and will nod along to anything, despite having no brain function. But when the bobblehead hears how Geico not only saves people money, but also gives them access to licensed agents 24/7 online and over the phone, he'll nod even more vigorously, because he knows you should switch. Because yes, switching to Geico is a no-brainer. Easy, bobblehead, easy. You're going to get whiplash.
The great thing about facts, they're proven. Like the fact that crude oil contains impurities. Or that base oil made from natural gas is 99.5% free of impurities. And the fact that Pennzoil is the first synthetic motor oil made from natural gas, not crude oil. It gives you unbeatable engine protection. The proof is in the Pennzoil. Based on Sequence 4A wear test using SAE 5W30. Ask for it at your local automotive retailer.
Guess what? You're in the middle of the Stephen A. Smith Show podcast.
Damn it, I mean it!
The ESPN Daily Podcast, bringing you a deep dive into a single story from one of ESPN's hundreds of reporters, presented by Dell Small Business. Download, subscribe, and review ESPN Daily, available wherever you enjoy your podcasts. It's the Stephen A. Smith Show on ESPN Radio. Taylor Twellman, Nicole Briscoe with you. Okay, what is the weirdest gift you have ever
I'm going to keep this real short and sweet
given,
because we are on national radio and for whatever
God
reason,
only knows what's coming.
I got something used. I'll just leave it at that. Used.
Okay, so I opened something and I'm like, what is this? Because it looks like a weapon. And I sent a picture to my husband. I'm like, what is it? He goes, oh, I was wondering when that was going to arrive.
Came?
It finally came. I was going to give it to you for Christmas.
Wait, it's your gift?
He gave it to me. It's like a baton.
Your husband gave you a knife to kill him?
I don't know. But he was real proud of himself.
Happy holidays.
So I got a weapon for Christmas. It's the Stephen A.
This is the Stephen A. Smith Show podcast.
I'm Stephen A.
Could be my alarm as well at 3 a.m.
Yeah.
We can make that happen.
You got to listen to a lot at 3 a.m. to get ready for a day, huh?
How about some Lizzo or something? I don't know. It's the Stephen A. Smith Show on ESPN Radio, the ESPN app, Sirius XM Channel 80, simulcast. Hi to anyone who's watching. Cameras all over here. On ESPN News, you can tweet us. It's Taylor Twellman and Nicole Briscoe, or call us, because there are a number of things to talk about today, a number of topics to discuss. Give us a call, 1-888-729-3776. If you missed the news right around, noon?
Yep.
Straight up noon down in Tuscaloosa, Tua Tagovailoa is not returning to the Tide. He's going to forego his senior season. He's going to go to the NFL draft.
Although you wouldn't have noticed it, judging by his facial expressions and tone in his voice.
Okay, so what did you take away from the look of Tua when he was like, yep, I'm going to the draft? That I just said that with more excitement than he did?
Yeah, I just listen to the audio first, and then I'll describe to the listeners at home what I mean.
Okay, well, here, let's just play it. This is what Tua sounded like when he said he was leaving Alabama.
Without further ado, with lots of prayers, thoughts, and guidance, I have decided that I will be declaring and entering the 2020 NFL Draft.
Okay, well, that's what it sounded like.
Yeah, and then watching it on TV, it looked like it was a very difficult situation, I get that and I understand that. I tweeted, and obviously anything you tweet on Twitter, it becomes an interesting conversation. Well, but obviously. I wonder about the family dynamic. That entire family uprooted themselves, went to Tuscaloosa. His brother is at Alabama. I know he's not projected to be the replacement, but that means Tua taking advantage of his situation and what he's going to make in his prospects and whatnot.
Could be a first-round pick.
Absolutely. A high first-round pick if everything goes according to the situation. But then think about his parents, and then knowing that brother's there, right, and that dynamic. Well, the sooner you leave, the sooner your younger brother gets an opportunity. I know the talent evaluators. All I know is I made a couple phone calls to people in the NFL world and in that agent world, and what it is. Everyone and their mother expected Tua to stay because that's what Tua wanted to do.
Right.
When I listen to the sound and I see the facial expressions, that was a much more difficult decision, and it should be celebrated that you're going to the NFL, my man. If you didn't get injured, you're projected to be tanked for Tua. This is all we talked about. The number one pick. That looked like almost a defeated man, and I'm like, wow. This is supposed to be his dream day. I just think the magnitude of the decision, I think I glossed over it. I'm very interested to hear what other people talk about.
Well, let's get to Dan Orlovsky. It's the Stephen A. Smith Show, brought to you by Shell V-Power. Let's try that again. Brought to you by Shell V-Power Nitro Plus Premium Gasoline, engineered with 4 levels of defense against gunk, wear, corrosion, and friction. Dan Orlovsky, please don't bring any gunk to this program. Okay,
well, I need an oil change, so I'm gonna go get whatever Shell V-Power you just said I need to go get.
When I crush a read like that, you can just make it better by continuing to plug it. First of all, let's get your thoughts. Like, what is your reaction to the fact that Tua is going to leave Alabama and go to the NFL?
Yeah, 100% the long-term correct decision for Tua. People need to remind themselves and remember that Tua's family, although they live in Tuscaloosa right now, don't live in Tuscaloosa just because. Like, they moved from Hawaii to Tuscaloosa, one, to follow Tua and watch his career at Alabama, but two, and very much so, to springboard him to being a big-time NFL quarterback. This was all part of a plan for Tua and the family. And so when the situation presents itself because of the injuries, the reality is, Tua, if you go back and play college football, the plan that we had could absolutely be blown up, and now we're looking at a very bad situation. So for that, it's absolutely the right time for Tua to go pro. You know, I truly believe I heard you guys talking about his kind of mannerisms when he announced that he was going to go. I think, and maybe we're all reading into this too much, but I think that you guys are probably accurate with the assessment that Tua looked a little somber. And I think Tua looked a little somber because he's not going when he wants to go and how he wants to go.
Good point.
The injuries are forcing Tua to go. And maybe Tua wanted to go to Alabama and win 4 national championships. Maybe Tua wanted to decide when he could actually go rather than having other variables be tied to it, and that's why there's a little, bummedness to it. But I also think this could be a blessing in disguise for Tua. We so often see young quarterbacks go to the NFL. Hey, you're the first pick. You're going to go to a terrible team and be the savior.
Yep.
And now maybe he goes at 7 or 8, and maybe a team like the Raiders take their 2 first-round picks and go up and get him, and they're a little bit healthier football team. Or maybe a team like the Steelers trade up and go get him and redshirt him for a year. I think it could be a blessing for him long run.
Okay, so let me ask this, and for everything that you know about Tua and everything that you know about the family, and the idea that no one really thinks that this is what Tua wanted. We're not saying he doesn't want to go to the NFL eventually. It's just that maybe he didn't want to do it right now. What do you think in the end was sort of like the catalyst? Was it the family? Was it the fact that he got good injury news when he met with the doctors in New York on Friday? What was sort of the straw that broke the camel's back that said, nope, we're doing this and we're doing it now?
Yeah, I think in the doctor's report on Friday, and in credit Laura Rutledge, who's kind of shared with us that there were some NFL doctors that were there, I believe, or NFL hip specialists or secondary. For those folks to say, Tua, you're trending in the right direction. Because the big thing for Tua was for him to, at some point here between now and the back end of April, get in front of NFL evaluators and decision makers and be able to physically move some. And I don't know how great it'll be. So the big thing for him was, can I actually go move around for those folks? And if that is the case, then it's time to go. And, 4 surgeries in 24 games, that there's a reality to that if a 5th surgery became a play, again, no longer is Tua going to be a first-round pick if a 5th surgery comes into play as part of his collegiate career. You're looking at that whole plan being absolutely blown up. And the reality is there's 32 teams in the NFL. A third of them don't need a quarterback, so they're not going to be in play for Tua. And then a third of them will probably, maybe not as high as a third, but a third of them will probably have a medical issue for Tua and may not think of him highly enough to draft because of the medical in the first round. And so now you're looking at 10 or 12 teams that could be in play for Tua. And eventually that window continues to shrink if injuries continue to be the number one narrative for you.
It's the Stephen A. Smith Show on ESPN Radio with Taylor Twellman, Nicole Briscoe, and Dan Orlovsky is joining us on the phone. If you love Nature Valley Sweet and Salty bars, you'll love the new Sweet and Salty Minis. It's all of the indulgent, savory goodness now in a smaller size. And at 100 calories, snacking has never been so sweet. I think Tua is the most recent news. So we'll give him like 1A on like the hierarchy of news. But then there was the news out
Depends on who you ask, Nicole.
Well, exactly. If you're a college fan, then Tua is number 1. If you're an NFL fan, maybe the stuff out of Dallas today is the bigger headline.
I think it's a good point. And Dan, when you look at Mike McCarthy and that hire in Dallas, while many people will say it's not the sexy pick, and a lot of those being Cowboys fans and Cowboys
Stephen
insiders and whatnot, Stephen A. Smith, fine. You can put him in that group. You believe that this is the right pick. Why?
I think it's a really good hire. I don't need to sit here and tell everybody about Mike McCarthy's track record, but there's 2 main reasons. One, the Dallas Cowboys are not getting the Mike McCarthy of old. They're not this isn't a retread of Mike McCarthy. This is a Mike McCarthy that was a very successful coach that is also in the last year, and Tom Pelissero of the NFL Network did a great piece over the last year. He has locked himself in a room and gotten in a routine like he was actually in coaching and watched a ton of film and seen where the NFL was trending with schemes and personnel groupings and the way different offenses are being kind of morphed into or brought into the NFL. And so he has realized, all right, I wasn't doing a good enough job of that. I need to learn some of this stuff and understand some of this stuff. And I think that's so impressive. So you're getting the old the winner and the person who's accomplished a lot, but a different and newer aged version of Mike McCarthy. And number 2, I think a lot of folks are going to look at Mike McCarthy and be like, well, look at Green Bay got rid of him, and all of a sudden they're the 2 seed in the playoffs. And people need to realize that Green Bay also did something this offseason outside of getting rid of Mike McCarthy. They also spent a ton of money in free agency, which is something they've never done with Mike McCarthy because their front office didn't do it that way. And so they're in the playoffs mainly because they invested a ton of money into their football team. Now, Matt LaFleur's did a great job. It's not a knock on Matt, but, I think Mike McCarthy is a guy that has been around as Joe Montana as a young quarterback, Brett Favre as a young quarterback. Aaron Rodgers as a young quarterback, so that'll be important for Dak. He's a guy that's embracing analytics, and we know that those are part of sports nowadays. The big thing for me with Mike McCarthy is, one, do you care what Jerry Jones thinks about you? Because if you do, you're going to succumb to the power. So he needs to be confident enough to not give in to Jerry. And two, the knock on him was that he dropped Aaron Rodgers back too much, that it became a pass-happy offense. And there's a truth to that. No one threw the ball more in the last 12 years in the NFL than Rodgers. So my imagination takes me to that meeting with Jerry Jones and Mike McCarthy going, listen, man, I get all this, blah, blah, blah. We're going to run the football with Zeke and blah, blah, because that's important and the numbers say it and all this stuff. And that'll be a big tell to see how much he's grown. But this is a really good hire for the Cowboys.
I think it's a good hire. I'm a Green Bay Packer fan, so like this was my coach for a long time, and I watched him win a Super Bowl in Jerry World. You know what? 8 years ago now.
Mm-hmm.
My God, time flies. Maybe I could have bought a seat on Vivid Seats. You can download the Vivid Seats app and enter promo code ESPN25 at checkout to get 10% off your next order. Don't buy just any seat. Get a. I am curious though. Like you went through the sort of the list of quarterbacks, Dan, that have been in the same room or in the same team that a Mike McCarthy has been involved with. I mean, you've got Montana,
Mm-hmm.
you've got Brett Favre, you've got Aaron Rodgers, and I'm probably leaving off a number here. Now he does, and let's just assume that Dak stays in Dallas. But we're going to assume that and say that Mike now gets to work with Dak. How can he help Dak sort of get to the next level?
Yeah, I mean, I think what he's inheriting with Dak Prescott is a good player who's had some really good stretches. Dak is coming off the best year of his career. It would be interesting to see, do they keep a Kellen Moore who I know is beloved in Dallas, and do they keep a John Kitna who's had tremendous impact on Dak and his development over this past year? That'll be interesting to see if they keep him. The big thing is, a lot of when Dak is playing on a consistently high level, he's mechanically very sound because Dak is a big, physical, talented player. He has been since he was at Mississippi State. That's what took Mississippi State to the number one ranking in college football, and that's what's kind of elevated his career over the first couple of years. Is he's a big physical player that has a natural skill set. But when he has those dips in performance, it's because his fundamentals aren't aligned all the time consistently. And Mike McCarthy, coming from the Bill Walsh teaching tree and Joe Montana teaching tree, learned how important that stuff was, and the ability that he did with taking the importance of those fundamentals and instilling them into Brett Favre and Rodgers, but yet still allowing those guys to play with the reckless recess type of style that he did. That's when those players, or at least allowed those players to have the dominant performances over years and years and years that they did on top of the natural talent. And I think if he can do that for Dak, you're going to see Dak take another step forward, not only next year, but here in the next, half dozen years.
Dan Orlovsky joining us, and a great follow online for those of you at home on Twitter. At Dan Orlovsky 7 gives you the real insight into quarterback play and whatnot. But Dan, I want to ask you more of a macro question regarding this past weekend, because Nicole asked me the same question when we got here in studio, because there was so much about the quote-unquote wild card weekend being a wild card. What was the one biggest takeaway you took away from the 4 games this weekend?
You can't ask me that question. My brain is, I can't give you one thing. I'm not wired like that.
Okay,
well, the reason why I asked you, here's why I asked you that, because I know the Carson Wentz and that injury and that situation and how he pulled legitimately a second-rate team, so to speak, with so many options gone. He carried them into the playoffs. That happens. For me, living in Boston, Tom Brady, that last game, that's why I asked you that. Also, the quarterback play was subpar other than Russell Wilson being effective and efficient, but only scoring 17 points. I just figured you were going to go with Carson Wentz. That's why I set you up that big.
Well, people probably anticipate. I'm going to give you like a 12-second nugget from every game.
Okay.
Houston is so dangerous because Deshaun Watson is one of those quarterbacks that come around that it doesn't matter as a defense what you do against him. And there's going to be people who are going to say that the Chiefs are going to blow their doors off, and I'm not there yet because this kid has this unique ability to overcome everything that's around him that I'm not ready, and I got to see how Kansas City plays. But my biggest takeaway out of the game is like how special Deshaun Watson is, and with better coaching around him, is going to become. The Patriots-Titans game, the Titans, I've been on the Titans for like 7 weeks. They are a violent physical football team that will absolutely challenge Baltimore. Now, here's a little nugget. When Dean Pease is the defensive coordinator for the Tennessee Titans, when he was the defensive coordinator for the Baltimore Ravens, it was in the Super Bowl against Greg Roman, who is the offensive coordinator for the Ravens when they had Colin Kaepernick. And so Greg Roman was the offensive coordinator for the 49ers when he had Kaepernick. So Dean Pease is going to know exactly how plan-wise they want to defend Lamar Jackson in that offense moving forward. But Tannehill played really good. Tom Brady is the least of the worries in New England.
Agreed.
It is not as easy of a Band-Aid as, hey, Tom, come back and we'll be really good again. They failed Tom Brady at the back end of his career. That's the truth. They have failed Tom Brady when it comes to the personnel around him. If Tom Brady goes to the Chargers, he's going to throw for 40 touchdowns and 4,500 yards. If he just gets better players, watch the tape. The guy can still flat-out play. If I'm New England, I'm doing everything I can to bring him back.
P.S. That was more than 12 seconds, by the way.
Viking Saints. The Saints stars let them down. Drew Brees' fumble interception, we never see that. Sean Payton's mismanagement of the clock, we never see that. Kamara's 3 plays in the last drive that took time off the clock. Unfortunately for the Saints, their stars let them down. And then
okay, wait. Can I time out there with you on that one and get you just to make sure that we hit on all the things, because Drew Brees is one of those quarterbacks that also has a question, right? Like he's 2 weeks away from turning 41. His contract is up March 18th, 13th. Like he could hit the free agent market. He could. I mean, the Saints could also franchise tag him. Do you think that this is as much of a question, Drew Brees back to the Saints, as it is sort of like Tom Brady, what he's going to do next? Which one's the bigger question?
I think they're both equally big. I don't think it's a shoo-in that Brees goes back to the Saints. The Saints have for about 3 years now gone all in and kind of sold the farm to figure out a way to win the Super Bowl. And I thought they would go to the Super Bowl this year. I thought they were a really complete football team, and they've built a lot of things around Drew Brees. I still think Drew Brees is plenty capable of playing. Yes, I don't need everybody in the world to tell me that his arm strength is not what it used to be. But look at his numbers since he came back from his injury. He's absolutely bald. He just didn't play well yesterday. So it'll be very interesting. The Saints are one of those teams that, to me, I keep an eye on Tua, because I think you could very easily re-sign Drew Brees or franchise tag Drew Brees or figure out a way, find some picks to get up and draft Tua and sit Tua, redshirt him for a year and allow him to learn under Brees. It's a perfect fit schematically. I'd be surprised if Drew Brees plays somewhere else, but there's as many questions to Brees as there is to Brady.
I just want to throw this out there because Taysom Hill is also a free agent this offseason as well. And Taysom Hill may have arguably
been, but I'm not totally sure. People comparing Taysom Hill to the Lamar Jackson type of thing.
I'm not sure about that either. But he was good. He was good yesterday. Okay, I literally have a list of questions for you. I want to get your thoughts on the hit on Carson Wentz. Let's just because this is twofold, and I said this to you, Taylor. I can't imagine what it was like for Carson Wentz to sit there and be waiting so long to make his playoff debut.
Oh, it's brutal.
And then to have the hit, and he knows that something's wrong, right? To have sort of the mental ability to be like, I know something's not right, and I need to protect myself.
Dan, I said you can't judge intent, but
no,
for me, the tackle was egregious and it should have been impelled.
What did you see?
Yeah, so I actually went to this game. My wife's from Philly, and obviously I've been publicly supporting Carson Wentz. I think he's a really good player, all that
Did you wear a Carson Wentz jersey or no?
He's a grown man.
No,
he doesn't wear jerseys.
Not to the game. To bed, but not to the game. But here's the thing. Yes, I agree with you guys. You cannot judge a man's intent. I am certainly not going to go on here and clown. He's going to try and hurt him. I'm not going to say that. But I think there's the truth to you either intentionally take your head out of plays nowadays or you intentionally keep your head in plays as a defender. And we've defended people I've heard enough about the head stuff. And so those guys are smart players. And I think Clowney was trying to make sure that Carson Wentz felt him. I don't think he's trying to make Carson Wentz hurt. It's obviously a bummer, but it doesn't matter what I think when it comes into play. We have a language that the officiating crew needs to invoke. Spearing is when contact is initiated with the top of the helmet on an offensive player's helmet. That is obviously what happened. So it 100% should have been a flag. I don't care what anyone says. That is the rule. Do I think it was dirty or intentful? I have absolutely no idea. I'm not going to put myself in Jadeveon Clowney's shoes, but I do know this. If he wanted to take his helmet out of it, he could have.
Okay, I need you to give me literally one word to answer the next two questions. This is also a challenge for Orlovsky because I don't think he can do it, but I need one word.
Correct.
Did Kyle Rudolph push off?
Yes.
Did Kirk Cousins change the narrative on Kirk with the K Cousins?
For 6 days.
That's more than one word, Orlovsky. You couldn't do it. It's Dan Orlovsky on the Stephen A. Smith Show with Nicole Briscoe and Taylor Twellman. I agree. For 6 days. I'll give Kirk six days.
Okay.
That's it. Maybe 6 days.
You are hard.
I am hard. I also am like an NFC North fan, so I think by blood I hate the Vikings.
Supposed to be objective here.
I'm
not objective.
I think he has changed the narrative a lot this year. He's gone to Dallas one prime time. He's had a big comeback, and he had a big game yesterday. He's changed the narrative. But if he goes out and lays an egg next week, that won't matter to folks.
All right. It's time for Straight Talk. The big wireless carriers try to wow you with big deals, but the savings are very little. With Straight Talk Wireless, you get the exact same networks as the big guys, but saving up to half the cost. So right now, you can get the unlimited plan with up to 25 gigs of high-speed data, then 2 gigs for just $45 a month. No contract, no mystery fees, all with the nationwide coverage on America's largest and most dependable 4G LTE networks. It's Straight Talk Wireless, only at Walmart. Thank you, Dan.
Thanks, guys.
It's the Stephen A. Smith Show on ESPN Radio and in the ESPN app. This is my big question out of today. We can talk and debate some of these things till we're blue in the face, but my big question is, how conflicted was Tua with his decision to leave Alabama? Laura Rutledge probably has a better idea than you and me. She's going to join us next.
Brought to you by Capital One. You know how it feels when you've saved enough for that long-awaited home edition? Now, imagine saving enough for an edition on that edition. That's the feeling with Capital One, where a new savings account earns 5 times the national average. Capital One is helping you earn more towards your savings goals. This is Banking Reimagined. What's in your wallet? Capital One N.A., member FDIC.
You're listening to the Stephen A. Smith Show podcast.
All this talk about Mike McCarthy going to the Dallas Cowboys as the head coach in place of Jason Garrett being uninspiring. And all I can think of is sort of the uninspiring way in which Tua Tagovailoa said, I'm going to the NFL draft. And it's Nicole Briscoe, Taylor Twellman with you on the ESPN Radio. It's the Stephen A. Smith Show on the ESPN app, Sirius XM, Channel 80. We're also on ESPN News. But like, it's a day that should be celebrated. It's a little boy's dream come true. And you get the impression that maybe he was doing it not on his own time.
Yeah, I just feel like there's a hole in the heart of Tua in the way this whole thing planned out, because every kid dreams about, I don't care what sport you play, every kid dreams about that day your name is called and the day you get to move on your career, whether it's from high school to college to the pros and whatnot. Yeah, I think oftentimes because of social media and the way our media cycles are, we just look at things and we're like, yeah, Tua should leave. He's going to make millions of dollars. Great and all that. I saw a man today.
Said than done.
Yeah, this one, there was a real inner struggle, I think. And I think Laura Rutledge, who's going to join us, is going to add that perspective.
So here's the select quote difference. Most companies give you one option, one policy, and one rate, but select quote shops. And you could get up to 10 options from highly rated life insurance companies. For a free personalized quote, call 800-601-6992 or go to selectquote.com. I think there's one person that can really sort of dial us into what has gone on for Tua, and it's Laura Rutledge, who joins us now. She's been in Tuscaloosa. You've sort of been all over this from the beginning. What has this process been like for Tua?
Well, Nicole, I think you guys just nailed it. I mean, it's so bizarre to watch somebody who is having a moment that should be celebrated, is having this great feeling day, you would think, but then it's not that way. And it was interesting, even as Tua's family, entered the complex here at Alabama this morning before the press conference. They got here around 10:30 local time, and the press conference was at 11 a.m. You could just feel this almost sadness, and it was not sad because they're upset that they're making all this money. I mean, there are probably people out there that say, well, wait a second, they have nothing to be sad about. But I really do think, and you guys said it, there's a hole in Tua's heart with, what should have been filled with, I think, in his mind, more national championships, maybe more opportunities for the Heisman, even though he's not a guy that, necessarily cares about selfish awards. But look, it would still be nice to have been in consideration for that. And I think he just looks at what's happened here at Alabama, and he said it today. It's been like a roller coaster for him. And today was almost a steadying of that ship in a way. It was just somewhere in between where he had moments of, laughing a little bit and smiling and kind of a moment of a little bit of a weight lifted off of his shoulders because I think that this had been weighing on him. But he also had moments where you saw how much it pains him. And even in talking to Coach Saban, following all of this, he said Tua's like a son to him. So to see Tua, go on to that next level, to know that he's not going to be around, it's more than just about what's on the football field. And I think my final point in that, you guys, is that everyone talks about Alabama and you kind of look at, what this program has been and what it's all about, and it becomes this, well, Alabama, they're just this powerhouse and they just win all the time. And I think we don't always talk about some of these relationships that mean more than that, and this is one of them, and Tua has been very special to the school.
Laura, I think you're an important voice on this, mainly because you live and breathe SEC football. You've seen it. I think a lot of people in media will often come to a judgment from 3,000 miles away. It's a simple question for you. How conflicted do you think Tua was leaving Alabama?
I think he was very conflicted. And I think even when he had to tell Coach Saban his decision, which happened over this past weekend, it was emotional for him because he really, I think, could have been satisfied to stick around another year. And it's tough for these young men because so much of this is not really based on what they would want to do in their heart of hearts. And they're just young men. I mean, they're not that old, they haven't experienced that much in life. And so to be sort of tasked with this type of decision of this type of magnitude at this age, I think is a lot that we ask out of these guys. And when he looked at it, and a lot of it too was based around the evaluation that he was going to get from the NFL hip specialist that Alabama brought in. And knowing that was trending in a positive way, knowing that, look, he's going to be probably a top 5 draft pick. We'll see what happens. That could create major drama on draft day if for some reason he falls or even if he's picked higher than that. I mean, who knows? But I think just knowing all of that and knowing that just nothing's been guaranteed for him, it just has never been easy as he looks when he's healthy and just throwing that football all over the field and having so much fun and being this, incredibly talented player. It has not been easy for him. And I think this was another chapter in that.
That voice you hear is Laura Rutledge's voice. I'm Nicole Briscoe with Taylor Twellman on the Stephen A. Smith radio show on ESPN Radio, the ESPN app, and Sirius XM Channel 80. Hi to those of people watching on ESPN News. You touched you touched on Nick Saban and Nick Saban's role on this. But I'm curious about what your eyes told you today, not about his demeanor, but sort of where Tua is in his recovery. Because one of the things that I noticed, that crutch was missing. So if you were to describe him physically at this point, what words would you use here?
Yeah, I mean, I would say he is ahead of schedule in my mind. And look, I'm no hip specialist, but, I remember in the early reporting of this, just how extensive this hip surgery was going to be. And all along, Alabama has gotten him the best care. They got him the best surgeon to do this surgery. But frankly, this is a surgery and a recovery and an injury that's devastating. And it's one that they expect him to make a full recovery for, but they have said all along that this was going to be a long process. And so to see him 7 weeks out today, and I believe it's exactly 7 weeks out because he had his surgery on a Monday, just walking around and barely having a limp. And like you said, Nicole, doesn't have the crutch anymore. He had the crutch actually at the Citrus Bowl, but I even thought that day we were there as well. I think he doesn't need that. I mean, it looked like he was moving around pretty well, and then today was the same. And it was funny because I was asking him about that. I said, wow, like you're up and about, you're walking all around. And he said, yeah, it felt a lot longer to me than it had to you guys. Every single hour of this has been
I'm sure it has felt like an eternity to him.
Right, because he's this guy that wants to be doing so much, and he wants to be out there, and he's going to have to, watch the national championship game, a game that he was in last year and didn't play well, again from the couch, and just not be able to compete in it, now kind of knowing that his college career is over. There's some heartbreak involved in all this, but to answer your question once again, I really do think that he is trending quite well in this recovery, and it was good to see him moving about in the way that he was today.
Well, and Laura, what we don't know, we've seen so many quarterbacks get drafted late first round or even later, it ends up being more beneficial to his career. So who knows if the hip injury turns into, you hate saying it now, a blessing in disguise. I'm going to be a little unfair to you, but I'm going to ask the question, even though it's only been, 2 hours since Tua has come out. Basically, where does Alabama go from here?
Well, it's an interesting question, and it's not unfair because I do think that that is sort of the next question for Alabama. And Mac Jones, who's backed up Tua and who has come in, obviously in the latter part of the season with Tua out, has been really good. And he's a guy that, you look back at the Iron Bowl, and that was just a game that, was so back and forth, and the defenses on both sides didn't really show up, especially Alabama's defense. But Mac Jones was pretty good. He threw a couple interceptions. One of them bounced off the back of running back Najee Harris. So it wasn't even really, I don't even really count that one. And then, he looked quite good against Michigan in the Citrus Bowl. So I think they feel very confident with him. They have Bryce Young, who's coming in, who's a highly touted prospect.
He's the number one ranked dual threat quarterback. You can't really tout him enough.
Right, and they keep reloading these guys. And I think what's interesting here now is if you look at how Coach Saban's handled quarterbacks, obviously we think about the Jalen Hurts versus Tua situation. Well, Jalen Hurts is this guy that was 26-2 as a starter. How can you bench him for Tua? They end up doing it anyway. I wonder if Coach Saban will take a similar approach or if he'll go ahead and just hand the keys to Young. Because as you mentioned, Nicole, this guy is seemingly has all the ability. We haven't really seen him yet in action, so we need to see some of that. Mac Jones has proven it in a short period of time, so there's a conundrum there. But either way, and you guys probably just saw this, but Smith is coming back. They will have Waddle. They've got, so many of these weapons still offensively in a receiving core that may still be the best receiving core in the country next year, despite losing a guy like Jerry Jeudy.
But they also have Dylan Moses, who said he's coming back for another year after he was out this year with injury. Obviously, that's on the defensive side of things, but that helps because that's where sort of Alabama struggled this year. And then also, and this is big for whoever is quarterback, is the offensive lineman in Alex Leatherwood. He could be a potential first-round pick. He's coming back for another year at Alabama. When we're having, though, Laura, this conversation about quarterbacks, there was one name that you didn't mention.
I noticed.
And that's little Tagovailoa.
Yeah.
Tua's little brother. How does he factor into...
By the way, Nicole, you called him little. I didn't call him little.
I know. I just mean little as in younger because he's definitely not little. But you know what I mean? How does he factor into all of this?
So it's a fascinating question. And if you listen to what Tua said in his announcement earlier today, he mentioned Talia and just talked about how he's still here. And that's a big part of all this. Look, I think what we've seen so far from Talia would tell me that I'm not sure if he can beat out Mac Jones right this second. I'm not sure if he factors in, necessarily if they want to go ahead and hand the keys to Young. I mean, frankly, if we're being totally honest, he's got some work to do. But it's not that he's not capable of doing that. And I think Alabama, no matter where Tua ends up, Alabama's a special place to the Tagovailoa family. They've made their home here. I mean, whether they stick around here now that Tua's headed on, who knows? But that is something to watch because you just wonder how they're going to handle that. And the other thing to keep in mind is that Tua will still continue to rehab here in Tuscaloosa for at least the foreseeable future. So that makes you say, well, okay, they're probably going to stick around for a little bit longer anyway. But I don't know. I mean, that one is a really interesting question. I was kind of watching Talia because he was in the press conference room as Tua was speaking today, just to kind of get a gauge on what his emotions were like. And, he seemed very calm and didn't show a whole lot, but you've got to think that this is a little bit of a weird situation for him as well.
Laura, thank you so much. What are you on? Back on Get Up tomorrow?
I am. I'll see you guys there.
You two, you guys have put.
No, I get tomorrow off actually. So I'll watch.
You've put in what 4 or 5 days in a row.
Yeah, shut up.
By being a full-time mother, well done, ladies.
Presented by Progressive Insurance. Drivers who switch and save pay an average of $796 less per year. Coming up on the Stephen A. Smith Show with Taylor Twellman and Nicole Briscoe filling in for Stephen A. A football team got hosed this weekend, and it's not the one you think. That's next.
An interesting creature inhabits the flat, arid plains of many an automobile dashboard. The bobblehead. It's most agreeable and will nod along to anything, despite having no brain function. But when the bobblehead hears how Geico not only saves people money, but also gives them access to licensed agents 24/7 online and over the phone, he'll nod even more vigorously because he knows you should switch. Because yes, switching to Geico is a no-brainer. Easy, bobblehead, easy. You're going to get whiplash.
The great thing about facts, they're proven. Like the fact that crude oil contains impurities. Or that base oil made from natural gas is 99.5% free of impurities. And the fact that Pennzoil is the first synthetic motor oil made from natural gas, not crude oil. It gives you unbeatable engine protection. The proof is in the Pennzoil. Based on Sequence 4A wear test using SAE 5W30. Ask for it at your local automotive retailer.
Guess what? You're in the middle of the Stephen A. Smith Show podcast.
Damn it, I mean it!
And if you want to join the program, you can call us at 1-888-729-3776. It's Nicole Briscoe and Taylor Twellman filling in for Stephen A. on the Stephen A. Smith radio program. You can hear us on the ESPN app, Sirius XM Channel 80. And, of course, if you're watching us on ESPN News, hi.
Hello.
I'm smiling at you right now.
Oh, I thought you were smiling at me, no?
No.
Oh.
See,
I didn't know the camera was behind me. I thought this whole day, I'm
camera.
like, wow, Nicole's in a good mood.
She's really looking at me.
That's fun.
A reminder that Golick and Wingo will be live from New Orleans this Monday covering the College Football National Championship, brought to you by the new gas-powered Sprinter from Mercedes-Benz. So, I know you're all just dying to know who got hosed.
What a tease you had, huh?
It's probably one of my better moments of the day.
It was good.
Yeah, who got hosed?
Yeah, it was well done.
And
who did?
The Saints absolutely got hosed because Kyle Rudolph pushed off.
Okay.
But the team that really got hosed, the Vikings.
Oh, here we go.
Kirk Cousins is not Captain Kirk.
You are. Yeah, this is the Packers fan, Nicole Briscoe, coming through you. That is so gross.
6 days, like Orlovsky said. They're going to spend 6 days thinking that Captain Kirk is back and it's the savior and blah, blah, blah. Dude won a game. And his only touchdown in that game was the one in overtime. Now, I realize that the Saints just let him march downfield, and that throw to Thielen was great. But really? He's changed the narrative on one throw, one play, in overtime? No.
Just
and if you believe that...
Can we shut up Nicole right now and give her the sound,
hit the
please?
Mute button?
Please give me the sound from the locker room from Kirk Cousins after the game.
That's how we've won all year, team, right? Hey, you held them to 20 points, man. Yes, you gave us a chance at the end, but I got 3 words for you. You like that?
Yes, that was directed right at you.
No,
right at you, Nicole. You like that?
The best part about
Just let him have his moment.
You like that? Randolph said this morning, he's like, as someone whose voice cracks at unfortunate moments, I feel
it was so genuine. It was so real. First off, this conversation about Kirk Cousins getting rid of the narrative. No, by the way, we control. Hold on. We control the narrative. I'm going to allow Kirk Cousins to have his moment. And I agree with Dan Orlovsky.
6 days.
Come on. To the point, though, they paid him to get to the Super Bowl. Case Keenum already got him to the NFC Championship game.
Exactly.
That's where this conversation's off, but there was a human element there where I'm listening to it. Kirk Cousins knows what's being said about him. He's never won on Monday Night Football. He can't win the big game. I'm going to allow him to have that moment, but if we take it any further than that,
I'm sorry. Do they beat the Niners?
No, I don't think they beat the Niners.
I don't think they beat the Niners either. Taylor Twellman.
Of course you don't. You're a Packers season ticket holder.
Smith. Coming up next on ESPN Radio, it's the Will Cain Show. We'll see
He'll
you
have
on Friday.
nothing to say.
No.